Uh, Welcome everybody to the Whatcom County Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force Steering Committee meeting for October 17th, 2024. We are meeting in a virtual format today. So without further ado, I got my agenda right over here. Let's start with our land acknowledgement, if I can get my machine to behave. And I can't. Jill, could you read in the land? Oh, I got it. I got it in front of me. Sorry, guys. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. So welcome, everybody. We are going to move right into our 2024 year-end report with Holly and Marty facilitating us.
Great. Thank you, Barry. Good to see you all. Marty, do you want to go for this?
Sure. This is just to let you all know that we have Jennifer Moon of Moonlight Solutions working with us on developing the year-end report. That's the IPRTF report covering July through the end of the year and kind of forecasting what's going to come next in the coming year. And she has gone through a lot of materials from your meetings, come up with themes. She's now drafting some text. And she'll be contacting each of the subcommittee chairs with that text and to ask you for your input, find out what she might have missed, what you, any edits you'd like to make on that, additions and clarifications. So I just want you to anticipate that will be coming up. The goal is to provide a draft for the, the ultimate goal is to get to approval at the December IPRTF meeting. So the timeline has been worked out to make progress toward that goal.
Great. Thanks, Marty. Any questions? Okay.
Looks like good progress so far. I like the framing.
Yeah, that looks great. Any other questions? Okay, Jill, could you put the agenda back up?
Yeah, give me a minute here.
So we'll go into the 2025 legislative agenda report. So that's Peter.
Okay. So it's report might be a bit of a stretch for just what I wanted to talk about. This is something that I just wanted everybody in the loop on kind of where we are with legislative asks around behavioral health. And it stemmed from a conversation I had with Alicia Rule not long before our first Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. So in that in that interaction that I had with Alicia, I was asking her if, what she thought the possibilities for the upcoming legislative session were. What I had on my mind was rapid reentry and behavioral care center funding. And she led me to believe that what her take was that these are things that the legislature is going to be very interested in this coming session. So I wrote an email to Kayla and to Barry to say, hey, I just want to make sure that this is on your radar. And I got a really interesting email back from both Jed and Kayla, and a very positive exchange. I've got it in front of me. I think that the way I would kind of sum it up is that they are thinking that rapid reentry and planning for the BCC, they're not far along enough that they'd be asking for capital monies for that, but planning and design monies, which I was absolutely delighted to hear. And I could go into some detail about how Kayla and Jed responded. I'm not sure if they're on this call. My screen's not that big, but then Kayla sent out a draft behavioral health legislative priorities that I also have in front of me. And there are, looks like 5 significant items that we have all been involved with in one way or another. I find that they're absolutely headed the right direction. I'm really happy to hear. But Kayla had an ask for the IPRTF and in her email, and that was, let's see, let me find it here. Let's see. There are so many different behavioral health facilities that need to be funded and sequenced. Rapid reentry, 23-hour. Of course, the way station is now built, behavioral care center, and they're looking for partners so that the county is not doing everything. And so that is definitely something on so that's something on their minds. I think that we should take that into consideration as well. And it would be helpful, she says, if the IPRTF could help prioritize amongst capital facility projects coming up. This is obviously something that is in our implementation plan. But since we're going to be talking about priorities, I just wanted to kind of cue this up as something that we could do that would be helpful in that look out numbers of years. How do we sequence these facilities and the spending, because we can really only do 1 or 2 at a time. Are there any questions or thoughts? I've got a lot of detail here, and I'm not sure who has been able to see this behavioral health legislative priorities list of 5 or 6, but.
Go ahead, Dan, but then I think it'd be valuable to have Satpal maybe weigh in a little bit from the executive office side, since Kayla and Jed aren't here after Dan goes.
I mean, the executive can go first. I just have a little bit of information and a question, but maybe Executive Sidhu can go first if he's got items.
Satpal, did you want to respond from the executive's office as to your progress on the legislative agenda prioritization?
Give me a couple of minutes. I'm still reading through. So
okay. Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
Go ahead, Dan.
Sorry, executive. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to give you the courtesy. Anyway, I just wanted to. We're talking about investments in behavioral health care center. there's $1 million set aside from the opiate settlement money that's in the proposed mayor's budget from the city. That would go to the city council for review and hopefully approval. I mean, I'm definitely supportive of it, but I just wanted to put that out there. And I also wanted to ask a question as to the current delta between committed capital funds, and then that 1 million proposed from the city, and then what is the gap left that needs to happen on the capital side of the project?
I'm not sure who you're asking that question of, Dan. It would not be me because I have.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be me because I'm not that far along in those conversations, but maybe
Okay.
that's again the executive's office.
Okay, thank you.
Stephen,
First off, is it possible to route Kayla's list of priorities? I mean, as a co-chair of the Behavioral Health Committee, I hadn't seen that, so that seems
Right.
a little bit weird to me, but I would like to see it.
Absolutely. I'm not sure entirely who was on that chain, but I'm happy to route it. Kayla's not here to give a thumbs up, but I do not see why that wouldn't. And this several weeks have transpired since it came across my desk, and so things may have changed. Maybe what I should do is reach out to Kayla, get her thumbs up, see if it's changed at all, and then she could route it to everybody.
Yeah,
I would think it would be only helpful.
that's fine. Thank you, Peter. I think checking with Kayla first is good. I'm just trying to stay abreast of where we are.
Absolutely. And I kind of hounded her for it. So that's how it got to me. But you know, it's her document. I'll reach out to her.
Thank you. My second question is also to you, Peter. You used the term rapid rehousing, which I had not heard before.
Rapid reentry.
Rapid reentry is what I meant.
No.
I hadn't heard of the rapid part of that, so I'm wondering, do we have a slightly different concept being developed?
That's a good question. That's the concept we picked up when we were in Columbus.
Oh.
And there's been a fair amount of conversation around it. That's what they called it. And you've probably heard us talk about this hallway as you're leaving the jail, and a very easy way into to be invited into a welcoming office to help you in your next moves, and charge your cell phone, get a cup of coffee, and find out what sort of programs and supports are available. I think that's the general concept.
Okay, I recall the hallway, and so that clarifies it to me.
Yeah.
any other questions on the legislative agenda piece? Okay. So IPTRF committees, I think I'll start out with the competency restoration work group discussion that we've had with staff. As you know, Perry Mowry and I formed this group a couple of years ago when this condition was probably at its worst, with the backlog of people trying to get restoration down at Western State. Between then and now, it's gotten quite a bit better as far as the waiting list. And that kind of combined with Perry's retirement in September has led us to a place where we don't have anybody to facilitate that group. We feel kind of that the conversation had evolved from restoration into prosecutorial diversion programs like Link down in King County and others that we've looked at. So that's kind of the next conversation, and that is something that's in the implementation plan. And so what Melora and we met last week, and Jill, to talk about this, and we thought, well, it's in the implementation plan. That's something that has oversight capacity for the JPOP and the task force. So we thought, well, that's a natural place for this work to go, is into the IPTRF. And Melora, she came out pretty strong, thinking it belonged in the behavioral health subcommittee. And I said, well, that sure sounds like a good idea, but I think we need to present this to steering and the folks on the task force to find out how to integrate this work into the task force the most efficiently. We're the ones that know the best. So we don't really have to make any hard calls today, I don't think, but I wanted to get it on everybody's radar that we would like to move this work to the IPTRF because it is in the implementation plan. Is such an important piece of what we're talking about. The Behavioral Care Center, for instance, is a prosecutorial diversion device. Sorry, I can't say that well. I lost a tooth and I'm having trouble with my consonants. So anyway, we have, we just feel that this conversation should go to the IPTRFs. We do, because we don't want to lose sight of it because of kind of the progress we made and some of the folks that we picked up along the way. We have a psychologist, Dr. Ted Judd, that joined the group that we want to make sure we can figure out how to utilize his expertise and his experience. So we're going to want to reach out to him because he's really, really valuable to that group. So anyway, that's all I have on that. So Peter?
I just want to provide just a little bit of framing for this number 4, this conversation. In our work this year, Heather and I have been, of course, on listening, asking questions, gathering information. Part of our work and findings are around reconfigurations of groups, rather committees and work groups and such. And so this whole conversation is not to make any decisions today, but to kind of bring to the table things like what Barry just started talking about. And the power of the work group is, I think, that we begin them and we end them when necessary. And I believe that the Competency Restoration Work Group did great work and is probably ready to sunset. And so I am encouraging this conversation. And we've got 3 other items in this section to talk about. And so I would just love to see any conversation or thoughts on number 1, which Barry just stated.
So Dan?
Yeah, I've got several questions when it comes to the first bullet point. One is what is the status of the True Blood grant that the county has put out? I'd like to get some feedback on where that's at. Also, would like to understand how many members are left in the True Blood category. The True Blood grant was for housing, and so I'd like to understand how many members are left in that group. And yeah, I'll stop there. I think those are 2 big questions, and I'd like to see if we have anyone that can answer that.
So I think maybe the executive's office could answer the status of the True Blood grant probably better than I could. So Paul, do you know the status of that?
Which grant, sorry?
The True Blood.
Oh, we got the money. It's $2 million or something. Kayla is not here. We did get that grant.
That's what I thought. I thought I heard somebody
Yeah.
say that, but I didn't want to misspeak. So, okay.
Wasn't it 7.7 million?
Yeah, it was pretty big amount. Yes, maybe
Okay.
it is. We got the grant. Yes, that much I know.
As far as the other part of your question, Dan, I think that'll take a little data mining or something to dig that information up as far as the number of people.
Okay, thank you.
I'll pass that on to probably the right people to make sure that they can get that to us.
Thanks.
Birdie?
Yes, I just want to comment on our overall committee structure because what I see is that, first of all, the Behavioral Health Committee is a very vigorous, engaged committee that is doing a lot of work. At the same time, it does meet monthly, and since almost everything related to our implementation plan seems to fall under the umbrella of the Behavioral Health Committee. I think we might want to think a bit about how we keep from totally overloading it. One of the things I'm realizing that I think the rest of you already know is most of the work gets really effectively done in small subgroups. So either we have a lot of small subgroups overseen by the Behavioral Health Committee, or we think about sharing some of that work with another committee. And I think Raylene's on the call. I know that you're completely overworked and I don't want to add anything to your work. I'm just wondering if a vigorous subcommittee of the Legal and Justice Committee could work with members of the Behavioral Health Committee. It's really not getting the work done. It's more how the reporting structure goes. I don't want to see the Behavioral Health Committee sink under its huge workload. That's where I'm coming from.
Heather?
Good morning. Two quick things. For the competency restoration work group, or for any work group or committee that we want to sunset, I would like to recommend that there is some sort of formal closing presentation at the IPRTF to share, here's what the work group did, here's the summary, here's why we're sunsetting, here's the data you need to know, here's who was part of it, just so there's like a real awareness of what happened, what difference was made or wasn't, what work is left to do, and why it's ending. And so I'd love to hear if you guys agree that that would be a nice way to sunset things formally. And then the second point I want to make is for prosecutorial diversion programs. I think that there's quite a linkage between the legal systems and behavioral health. They need to really work together to make that work. And I see Eric's on the call too. So I hope that remains an IPRTF agenda item in some way or in multiple ways, really, because there's so much opportunity there.
Dan?
Yeah, I just want to speak to what Heather just mentioned. So City of Bellingham will be launching a community court here relatively soon, and that is a prosecutorial diversion program just by definition. It would be helpful, in my opinion, for the legal and justice systems. And I'm not, this is my opinion, I'm not directive in this approach here, but I think it would be helpful to have someone from the city's municipal court, whether it's a prosecutor or one of the people that are associated with the community court program, to be involved. And so we can then elevate what's happening there to the discussions in legal and justice. And then legal and justice and behavioral health meet 4 times a year in a joint meeting. So we could be sharing information back and forth. We don't have that right now. And I think that we're a little bit behind when it comes to planning for the community court, which I think is probably going to start up here in the next month or two. So I just want to make that recommendation here and see what the group's reaction is.
Any comments on that particular? Stephen?
Maybe I should let Raylene go ahead since.
Raylene?
Maybe I should let Raylene go ahead since Dan's suggestion was directed to her, and I can.
Yeah, go ahead, Raylene.
Thank you. I mean, I know that there's been some side meetings that have happened in the past. I believe Denise Richter spoke and Jake Weebush spoke earlier on in reference to their involvement in the mental health court, because Bellingham Municipal had a mental health court, and so does District Court. Superior Court has a recovery court. And the community court is definitely different. I think reaching out to them about what's projected, what the expectations are, what data we're going to want from those courts programs to see what's working, what's not working, what we think we might be able to implement in other ways. There's a lot of talk about other types of programs and how that would look like in our county, whether it's just the community court or if we want to look towards a veterans court down the road. So there's a lot of different options, and I think it would be worth reaching out to Tammy Bennett with Bellingham to see if she's got ideas on who she think might be able to report on that in progress. So thanks, Dan.
So I do have a question for you, Dan. What role do you think would be appropriate for that, a person coming from there?
Well, I just think that we've got a complete, pardon me, we've got a court system for the city of Bellingham that just doesn't have any representation on this committee, and it might be helpful. I'm, like I said, I'm not trying to be directive, but I think that, if Tammy, so let me back up here real quick. So I meet with the mayor and Judge Lev in a tripartite fashion every month for the 3 branches of our government. And I mentioned this committee to Judge Lev, and she seemed pretty receptive to, trying to figure out, like, maybe someone from municipal court could come over and serve on legal and justice. And so I just want to open up that opportunity. I think that given the fact that we've been pursuing therapeutic courts for some time now, and adding another one, I just think we'd be better served by having that representation. And I'm not quite sure how to do the entree here, if I'm the person, or Raylene, if you're the person, or whoever's the person to reach out to Miss Bennett. But I think it just might be, it would be a good conversation to have and explore that.
Dan, just so you're aware, Tammy was at the meeting last week for Legal and Justice and did participate.
Okay, thank you.
And Jill here, I'm going to jump in as well. Yes, Tammy has replaced Darlene on the IPRTF. So she is a member of the IPRTF now and Legal and Justice, both.
Great.
And she's
Okay.
been attending.
That
Thank
was my question too, is I knew Darlene was a member, and I wondered if there was a replacement for her. So I guess there is, so. Okay, Stephen.
I want to tackle a different dimension of the question on prosecutorial diversion and so forth. I think we've all been in conversations where we've expressed a little frustration over the last year or two that we do a lot of talking in the committees, exploring, educating. Maybe we raise some questions. I don't think we do as good a job researching and answering those questions as we do talking about them at first. And we certainly don't do as good a job converting that into action items and recommendations. So I think there's been a pretty express request to all of us in our committees to orient ourselves toward action items. I think we've talked our way through the prosecutorial diversion program. I think we've looked at other models. We've looked at other ways to achieve competency restoration. We've pretty much settled on this. Maybe the details of the program aren't set. I think we could use a little more participation from Eric or one of Eric's designees to actually buy in and take hold of that. But we're at an actual program creation stage of that. I do not think that should be housed with the task force, which is a talking exploration body. I think if we do it in a work group, it needs to be people who know they're there to work and create something. I think that's, I think Raylene would agree with me. That's been a challenge for Legal and Justice over the last couple of years, a little bit less so maybe in behavioral health, but we're sort of maxed out there. So I just want to emphasize, when we move something like this, when we get it to a point where we can close out a work group that was a discussion and research kind of work group, that we get it in front of people who actually have some decision-making authority, have the time and have the interest in creating something concrete about that. And I haven't quite heard that we have a target group for that, for competency restoration, or prosecutorial diversion. It would have to take some involvement, obviously, from the prosecutor's office, more than we've had, I think.
Heather?
Stephen, would you see like a formal sunset process? You could easily have a like, who do we need to present this information to make decisions as part of that process? And when I see the words prosecutorial diversion program, I think really broadly. I don't think of a proper noun program. So that's why I said, of course, that should continue to be on our agenda in some way. Prosecutor plus diversion, like that's what we're doing a lot. But hearing you say it's actually more of a proper noun, that there's a single program that was researched or developed, and maybe I'm not hearing it right, but that's why I think having like a formal sunset moment at the IPRTF full meeting to say, here's what we learned, here was the outcome, here's what's next, would be helpful even for me to know.
I kind of agree with that. The only thing is the IPTRF didn't create the work group. The work group kind of created itself. And we just kind of reported to the task force, you know, as a matter of obviously it was important to convey that information. So from a formal sunsetting standpoint, there's nothing to really sunset. There was never any ordinance that created them. There was never any action out of the IPTRF to create them. But I think at the very minimum, I agree with your philosophy, Heather. So I'm trying to do a caveat here of maybe some sort of a written report from staff, because it's going to have to come from the staff side. And I don't know that they're going to have the time to put together like a formal presentation. I can ask, but I think maybe some sort of a record of what we did look at. Things you're asking for, we could maybe enumerate in a way that's not too burdensome for them.
Yeah, maybe take away the word formal, but just like what happened? Just a status update.
Right.
What happened? And even knowing it wasn't an IPRTF driven work group is good to know. I didn't realize that either. So
yeah, no, your point's well taken. We'll think of something. Stephen?
Yeah, just to respond a little bit to Heather's question, I would start by deconstructing the process a bit and say, I think one thing I take out of this is this should have been an IPRTF subcommittee. I very much appreciate the initiative you, Barry, and Perry took in forming that, but you could have easily brought it to the task force and got it endorsed and brought that energy to it as well. And maybe we should do that so that then we can have the kind of loop and closure and pass off that Heather's advocating for. Because I agree, it's a little awkward having sat alongside clearly at one of the cores of task force thinking, but yet not really connected to the task force. The other thing is, Heather, I did sort of use it as a proper noun. I don't think we researched it so broadly that we could say we looked at every model of prosecutorial diversion programs, but we did look at a couple, and some of the people, Barry, maybe Eric, Perry, I think also, actually went down to Seattle and had somebody come up and talk. There was some connection with the Link staff.
Yes.
And there was discussion about that. That was targeted as the model that we wanted to work off of. Not exactly, much like our adoption of a lead program model. We are thinking of it in ways that are localized. And so that's why I spoke of it sort of with the capital P and D and P.
Okay, Peter, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about under IPTRF committees? We've kind of cacked in a lot of our time here, so.
Yeah, we have. Well, there are three other, well, let's see, two committees to discuss and another work group. I'm not sure we have time today, but I am appreciative of this conversation. I was going to make a motion that we sunset the competency restoration work group and ask for a report. But if it's not an IPRTF work group, then I don't think that a motion is necessary.
No, it isn't.
Okay. Perhaps we could take 5 minutes each on each of these other. I'm not sure how much time we need for number 6, but I think it's at least 20 minutes or 25 minutes. So Barry, as chair, I'll let you be the timekeeper, but I could address crisis stabilization facility for future conversation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. For some time, we have known that this, I believe we have all known that this committee should either be sunset or changed to change its charter to revolve around not just the crisis stabilization facility, but also other facilities. However, with Perry leaving, it gave us a good opportunity to talk with Melora, who would be taking Perry's place in this committee. And so I proposed that perhaps we again sunset this committee or change it into a broader committee. Some discussion was had. Melora had suggested that from her point of view, it could be sunsetted and that they have a committee. It's called the Crisis Stabilization Center Oversight Committee, working with. It's a meeting made up of law enforcement, EMS, hospital social workers, hospital ED staff. Looks like response division staff, Compass, Pioneer, BHASO, dispatchers, and PAC providers. However, that doesn't provide any, it's not a public meeting. It doesn't provide any oversight. And so my concern would be, either we get reports to the IPRTF regularly from this, but I wouldn't necessarily want to let go of all of the functions that committee has provided in the past. So just wanted a general conversation about what we might want to do with this committee. Any thoughts around the room? Obviously, it's going to be a longer discussion than we have time for now, but I did want to bring it up.
So Bertie, you got comments on that?
No, I wanted to add one more thing before we move on to another agenda item.
You mean past this one?
Well, I just wanted to talk about the index committee very briefly.
Oh, yes,
Well,
that's
on the agenda.
Oh,
That's on
okay,
the
I
agenda.
thought I misunderstood that you were moving off IPRTF committees, so.
No, we're not. We're going to the
Okay.
next one, which is behavioral health, behavioral care center work group. And I'm not familiar with that term, so.
Yeah, this was okay, so we have been asked, specifically, we being the IPRTF, to spend some significant time on behavioral care center work, research and such. And there have been, I've participated in maybe 5 different ad hoc meetings with folks that we met when we were touring Nashville and Columbus. Another jurisdiction is Memphis, and another is, I believe it's Cincinnati. And these are all jurisdictions that have either put forward in their community a BCC or are considering doing it. And Hannah Fisk and Caleb Erickson have joined me on some of these calls. They're pretty exploratory. There's been some really good conversation. There have been some resources put forward and presentations and such. I know that this is going to be a critical thing for us in our community as we move forward to design a behavioral care center program. And so I am suggesting that we might want to consider putting together a work group around this topic and look for best practices and see how they will fit in our community and in our new jail.
Comments or questions on that, Bertie?
I think that sounds like a good idea. And I think as the IPRTF goes on, it's important for us as we do the work and things move forward to sunset small work groups that have to some degree accomplished their task. And I certainly agree with Heather in the making it an informational sunset, but it sounds like it's time now to focus on the behavioral care center work group. And that is something that, again, my personal approach is it's best done in the work group, which then reports out to one of the larger committees or the task force as a whole.
Anybody else? Comments on that idea? Stephen? You're on mute, but
I'm sorry. I'm still grappling with how all of this is coordinated. Melora has specifically said to Dan and me, we asked her what areas could the behavioral health subcommittee focus on in a most helpful way. And one of the things she said was the behavioral care center. So, and yet there are these side exploratory conversations going on that never report into the behavioral health committee. I mean, ideally they would report to the exec's office and stay there because that's where the implementation is being carried out. I don't know what we're talking about with this. What would a work group within the behavioral health care center do that's not already getting done, gathering the information and feeding it up the chain of command within the executive branch?
There was a specific ask, I believe, from Kayla for us being the IPRTF to do research, wide research, and to bring it to light. So I do see that as an IPRTF function, and it can be reported out to. It could be in the behavioral health committee under the committee if that seems to make the most sense. But reporting out to the IPRTF, the task force as a whole would be good, and then making sure that the information is actionable, helpful for the executive's office.
speaking of executive,
Yeah.
go ahead, Paul.
So I just wanted to add to what Peter just said, that since we will be starting this project next year, middle of next year, we are a little bit short on some money, and we are reaching out to Peace Health and for the operation side also. Our thought was that that this group is the right place. They can find what should it include, where, like, we don't have to just build a big room and put 5 couches in there or 20 couches in there. That was the more or less the concept. It's a big room with couches, and we wanted to know what kind of functions it can serve. what according to the needs of our community. I think that's specific input we were looking for because there's a lot of expertise on this panel, on this group from different sides. So that, yeah, that was our aim to ask for some research or suggestions.
Are you referring to the 23-hour or are you referring to the
23-hour facility?
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's just to be clear, that is a different subject than the behavioral care center as part of the new jail.
Okay, okay. So then I'm mistaken then, yes.
But it's that's good information for us to have that we could be helpful in some way for the doing research for the 23-hour. So
yes.
Dan.
Yeah, I'm not trying to kind of problem solve here on the fly, but I do think that we definitely have partners here locally. So Dijwalik Clinic could help us provide for trauma-informed care and what that could look like for both the behavioral care center for the new jail and the 23-hour facility. And then Tukwila recently passed, I think it was a bond for their justice center. Same thing, trauma-informed care, people forward. So we have local assets that we could be talking with and consulting, down the road for whatever, when that work group gets together and starts to perform their work, we have local experts. And so I just want to put that on the record that those are available and willing groups. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Anything else on the behavioral care center work group idea? Peter, what I would like to see is, can you put together a little short one-pager kind of proposal, what they would do, just kind of embellish your thoughts.
That's a great idea, and we can shop it around and see where it lives to Stephen's point, how it's organized, and I think we can develop it in such a way that it's helpful to everybody. So I will do that.
That sounds good. Thank you. All right, we'll move to Index Committee and Birdie.
Okay. So Jill, if you don't mind putting up the revised mission. As you know, Peter and Heather have been asking all of the subcommittees to look at our original mission and make suggestions and recommendations to update it. And probably the Index Committee is one of the ones that had one of the more outdated mission, because the mission was actually to develop the data, et cetera. So at our last October 3rd meeting, we discussed our mission statement and approved this recommendation for revision. So we don't have the original one and the two side by side, but without spending a terrific amount of time, I think I can fairly quickly walk you through the changes. And my goal of this discussion is to get approval from the steering committee. I guess it goes to the IPRTF task force because the mission lives in the ordinance. And so we have to update the ordinance formally. So very briefly, the only change in the overall mission statement that you see in the first paragraph was that we wrote that the mission was to advise in the development of data collection, et cetera, whereas the original statement did not have to advise and just said it was to develop a data collection and reporting system. And so this was an intent to clarify some of the confusion that some of the members have expressed over the last year or two about getting clarity of our role. And then when we get to the goals, we felt that we had moved past the original goal 5 years ago of kind of walking to each agency and finding out what data they had and what data they needed, because that was actually put together. So looking at the world through the 2024 lens, we thought that our role was to be a resource to contracted consultants to advise on the IPRTF goals and implementation plan. We thought that we would be a group that would make recommendations on how to prioritize the various steps in the development of the a reporting system for the entire justice system. We thought that we could be a resource on current technology systems. We have a lot of both the health department and the county senior technical people on our committee, and that they felt they could serve well as a resource and are already responding to the Holly's request to collect an inventory. And then finally, recommend the development of new policies as necessary, because it's become fairly clear in the different discussions that have been held that there will be a need for countywide policies to be made in order to assist in the coordination of data. The data lives in different agencies within our county, and the health department and the folks from the executive's IT department agree that we're going to have an overarching county policy to facilitate in confidential data exchange. So in a nutshell, that is our revised mission statement, and I'm opening it for input and modification if folks feel it's needed, with the ultimate goal of actually getting it into the ordinance. Satpal.
Okay. Well, I actually sent an email probably just 20 minutes ago to the yes, committee members also. I think that the word advise is too soft. To me, this is a crux of our thing for future to collect the data. I think that maybe from the executive's office, we have a prosecuting attorney's office, sheriff's office, health department are the main people, and maybe public defender. We have to have a common thread of data collection in all these departments. And it will not happen with advice, because they will take the advice from IPRTF in a different way, whatever suits them, they do this. I think there should be an apex where we should take their current forms and reporting system. Like, what are the forms they fill when they get in touch with the person? Whenever they touch that person, there must be some form filled, which becomes a data and which becomes a basis of their report. We have to go to that form and change that there is a common thread. So when you get this data, whichever format, and I know there's a confidentiality, there may be not names or last names or other things, but there will be a common thread. There should be 3 or 4 common things. Even if, suppose, for example, prosecuting attorney thinks, I don't need this data, why to collect it? That's what the advice happens. Yeah, they advise, but we don't need it. We don't want it. But there has to be a overarching need, whereas we can tell this department, ask the department, no, you need to connect that because you may not need it. Somebody else needs it to get that data collection, so that we can make a policy change and make an inference from this data. What do we really need? Otherwise, we are already collecting data. If we just say this thing, I don't think anything will change, or very little will change. Let me put it this way, very little will change. I think this thing should come as a directive from IPRTF to the executive's office. And we will make an ordinance to the council. And that ordinance should be given to those 4 or 5 different departments, but it should have a Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C, where it says that sheriff, when they arrest somebody, this is the data they collect. When it's in jail, this is data collected. When it is PA's office, this data collected. And somebody should look at all these forms in one place on one whiteboard and say, this is where the gaps or disconnections are. And then make a recommendation that please connect this, change your form to this form, change your report to this format. Until we take that action, our expectations will not be met. And we will be still having data and reports which don't talk to each other. So I want to think the index committee's work is very, very critical. And it should be a directive, or it should be converted into an ordinance at some point of time. That's where we need the help.
Satpal, do you have a recommendation for what word you would substitute? Would it be something like direct?
Yes, in my email, I will read it to everybody. I said we should make one more goal. And actually, we should change the mission statement now, since I'm reading again, is to advise. I think that advise word is too weak. We need to change that, or it should be, we'll direct the executive. Like, who should you be reporting to? That's the first thing we should do. Index committee reports to the IPRTF. Then where does this go? Who it tells to do what? It should be going to two people, the council and to the executive, to make it any effective.
Okay.
Right? And that should be the element included, that they will direct or advise the council and the executive's office to make these changes. The other thing what I wrote is make recommendations or provide guidance to implement consistency of data collection and the measuring parameters across various county departments, like prosecuting attorney, sheriff. Sheriff has two pieces, law enforcement side and the jail side, and the public defender and public health. So I have just sent the email, please review, feel, edit, redo it. I'm sorry I don't attend all the meetings. So you may have covered in some of your discussions. But the crux is, it should come as a directive to the council and to this, that please change our data collection system.
So I'm
And
gonna
we
jump
can
in
tell
here
IT
and
and
just ask Jill. I think Jill might be able to assist us with the language, because going from advise to direct is something that I would question whether the task force itself has that kind of authority as it sits right now. So I would ask Jill, maybe she could figure out the language or what we might need to do to the original enabling ordinance to be a little stronger than just advise. But I think that I would like to hear Jill's take on that.
Okay. Once more, if I can continue. Advise is fine, but it should say advise the council and the executive department. That then we know where it is going through the IPRTF whole thing. Index committee should go up the chain of command, and then it should come to us. The second part is, it does not mention that how this will be revised. Like, how data points currently existing should be changed. There should be some wording to that effect, that if we keep collecting the same data, we're not making any difference.
Yeah.
All right, gang, I'm going to give 2 more minutes on this
Okay,
subject,
I'm
and then we're going to
done.
move on. So go ahead, Stephen.
I just want to start with a bit of historical memory. Index was created to pull together county departments and understand what we had and what we didn't have. That's why it's framed in terms of, like, the second bullet point talks about the justice system data. And that's why Satpal's talking about the county departments. But we're years beyond that now. We've got half of this sales and use tax money going outside the county system in community-based services that are not really justice system services, they're treatment system services. And so one of the things, I frankly like this, and thank you, Bertie, this was really a thoughtful revision, but the scope of it is still within the county and within the justice system. And I think we need to see its scope seen as incorporating contracted services and community-based services. For instance, the contracts we have with the Ann Deacon Center don't give us access to data. And I know the health department is now thinking about revising how they contract with a service provider so that we do have access to data. And I think that needs to be within the domain of responsibility for the index committee. So that would be my only suggestion for change here. Otherwise, I really like what you've done.
All right, any last final quick thoughts? Bertie, we'll let you close.
Thank you. I just would like a little clarity on the next steps. So it sounds like we're going to work with Jill to make recommendations regarding appropriate language within the ordinance, and then assimilate these various ideas that have been discussed and then come back with a revised one at the next steering committee. Would that be the appropriate? I'm kind of pushing to get some action on this because it's very confusing currently without clarity from all players on what our role is.
I think the path you just described is a good one, Bertie, that we
Okay.
would wordsmith this a bit and then bring it back to steering next month.
Okay, sounds good. I'll work with Jill on that then. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Let's move to IPTF meeting agenda, and Peter.
Okay, just kind of want to frame up this conversation. As you know, and I've mentioned already in this meeting, Heather and I have been doing a lot of listening in all of the committee meetings and the IPRTF main body meetings. We have also reached out to the county council and to some director level staff as well. And we delivered a report to the steering committee a number of months ago. And we then in here got some more feedback from everyone. As you know, in the last two IPRTF meetings, we have taken the implementation plan projects, and we have asked the question, who on the IPRTF is involved in each project at staff level and otherwise, and who is the lead for each project in the county? Two, what projects align with each committee, what committees expect to have on their agendas in the next 18 months regarding the implementation plan, which we hope to address in the November IPRTF meeting, a scheduling an 18-month look at what we'll be working on. So number three, we have not yet addressed, and that's what we would like to, that we're proposing we work on in the next, in the October meeting of the IPRTF, and why we're discussing it today. So number three is, if we could pick only 3 projects this year to prioritize, which ones would they be? And we want to, there's a note here to get back to County Council Member Scanlon and the County Council about their question regarding prioritization for budget purposes. So we have developed a list of 10 proposed subject areas from 2 processes. One, this listening tour that we've done, which rolled up into the report that Heather and I gave to you all. And there are, let's see, those broke down into 4 different areas: communications, policy advocacy, structural, kind of process function items, and also focus areas for agendas, committees, and action. And so there, all of that listening, it came down to 10 different focus areas. What I did was took this list of focus areas that we have all come forward with, put it next to the implementation plan, and then gone through a process of harmonizing those. And it leaves us with, to my mind, 10 projects that we should rank. I'm not saying that we're not going to do all of them, because we are responsible for all of them, but we know that in the coming 18 months, if we're really going to make headway, we're going to want to know what we feel are the most important to work on. So we have an exercise to try on you today that Marty and Holly and Heather and I put together. And Holly, is that a good enough framing for our exercise?
Yeah, I think so. We want just to clarify the other part of the process, which, just to be clear, was when we went through each of the goals or each of the projects on the implementation plan. Do you remember our IPRTF meetings in August and September? So when Peter is talking about the harmonizing, that also reflects that work we did. So we're trying to bring it all together. So what our hope was for this session is that we could do kind of a dry run of this process, which is Peter would go through what those goals are. So we've been kind of using them interchangeably as IPRTF goals or projects. So not to get hung up on that. That we go through those, and then we would use a Menti poll, which we sent you a link when Jill sent you a link, I'm thinking about 9:30 a.m. And we just go through the process of saying, okay, if we had to prioritize 3, which 3 would we prioritize? So that's what we're going to try and do. And we'll go through it together, and then we'll see how'd that work. So you guys are kind of like, you're the test run. So make sense? What we're going to do? We're going to try it out, see if it works. Okay, so here we go. First thing is Marty's going to put up the slides with the 10 goal areas, which they'll look very familiar to you because they were all created by you, basically. And then we'll do the Menti. Okay, Peter, you want to go through these?
Yes, and yes. Okay, so here are the harmonized goals from all of our work. So goal number 1, create a data dashboard to track key metrics and support data sharing between criminal justice and behavioral health organizations and the public, promoting transparency and informed decision-making. That's goal number 1. And let's not get too hung up on the language, because we all know what these, I believe we know what these generally are. And so number 2, goal 2 is develop systems to improve communication and coordination between behavioral health providers, working with justice-involved clients, ensuring seamless care and integrated service delivery. All right. Next one, goal 3, strengthen and evaluate diversion programs for justice-involved individuals with behavioral health and substance use disorders, focusing on improving outcomes, reducing recidivism, and providing alternatives to incarceration. Goal 4, adapt best practices for designing and operating the new jail and behavioral care center to meet Whatcom County's specific needs, ensuring effective service delivery. Goal 5, identify additional facility needs to support individuals with behavioral health and substance use disorders at the risk of incarceration, ensuring resources are aligned with community needs. Goal 6, enhance re-entry services such as case management, peer support, housing, and healthcare to reduce recidivism and support successful community reintegration. Goal 7, expand supportive housing for individuals with behavioral health issues and a history of incarceration, providing stable housing to reduce recidivism and support recovery. Goal 8, implement court reforms to reduce incarceration rates, decrease pretrial detention, increase case resolution efficiency, and expand alternatives to bail for more equitable outcomes. Goal 9, periodically update and apply the sequential intercept model, prioritizing key gaps identified by subject matter experts to reduce the general population of individuals with mental health and substance use disorders. And the last one, research and recommend best practices across all IPRTF domains to improve program effectiveness and drive system-wide improvements. And this language was chosen as the goal of the IPRTF efforts, knowing that we are in the business of researching, discussing, and making recommendations, not actually in enacting these things. That is for others to do, but we frame them as goals. So what's our next step, Holly?
Okay, so the next step is, so again, we're going to go walk through this and then we can talk about the whole thing. The next step is you want to get on your email, which was the one that Jill sent you where she said final revisions or something, and find your Menti link, which was at the very bottom. So before we move on, let's see if you can all find that.
Still here. I just resent that, so it should be at the top of everyone's email inbox.
Perfect, bless your heart. Can we just take a moment to give her undying gratitude for Jill and for Jenna?
Yeah.
Like we would not do anything without them. Okay, let me know. Just tell me when you've got it.
I'm seeing it.
Okay.
I'm seeing it.
I see it, I can't open it yet.
Okay. Like, because you just haven't or you can't, like something's going wrong.
Oh, no, it's just the system. I'm just waiting.
Just waiting. Okay.
Jill, I have the email, but it's not a live link.
Yeah, I can't
Scroll-
either.
Scroll down to the bottom, which has the original email that Marty and Holly sent me. There might be a link. It wasn't real clear what the link was.
I can share
like a
my
little-
screen and show you what it looks like. Is that okay?
Sure,
Yes.
that'd be great.
In your email, it should have this image.
Yeah.
You see this image? If you click on this specific like votingmenti.com, that should open. And then you'll have to copy and paste this access code right here.
Yeah. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah.
This is why we do test runs. Okay, so as soon as you're ready, let me tell you what's there. You'll click on it and it'll show you those 10. And you're going to go ahead and pick 3 out of those 10. And then it's going to populate in real time on the screen. And then I'm going to show the screen. I'm going to do my screen share. What Marty and I discovered when we did this yesterday is that it can be a little bit challenging because when you start to do the Menti, you won't be able to necessarily see the Zoom screen. So you're going to have to finish the Menti, then close it, and then come so that you can see your Zoom screen. Right? It's going to be, yeah, if we could do it on chat, that'd be easier, but we can't use chat. So that just makes this process slightly more complicated. Okay. Eric, were you able to find it? Mr. Ritchie? You're muted.
Right. Try to click that. I wasn't sure I was part of the committee, so I didn't look.
Oh, okay. Well, if you want to do it anyway, this is
Oh.
just informal for like fun.
Okay.
You can.
Right. Well, thank you.
Okay. All right. Everybody ready? Okay. Go ahead and click the link and you'll see the shorthand version of each of the goals that Peter just described. And you're going to pick 3.
And then if we just close how do we
You
close?
have to hit submit, which is under the list. There's a
Gotcha.
submit button and then you'll be done.
Gotcha,
Thank you, Marty. I forgot to mention that. You have to like go all the way down. If you don't hit submit, you won't be done. Okay, Bertie, let me know when you're done. If you've
I'm
done
done.
it. Great.
I'm done.
Barry? Paul?
I'm done.
Great. Councilmember Buchanan, how's it going? Good.
Done.
Okay, Dan? Good. Okay, anybody who needs more time? Right, so now I am going to share screen and go to this. And then I will
Hmm.
do where's the thing where you can see the whole thing. So I'll do it as full screen now. And you can see where we landed. Woo! And it does, it's like, woo, like they fly through the air. So then you can see what our totals were. So in terms of priorities, we've got the biggest number with the 29% creating a data dashboard. Then the next two would be adapt best practices for design of new jail and behavioral care center, and 21% enhance reentry services. So that's where we're getting this, being able to kind of quickly come to where are the top priorities. And then that would lead us to be able to do our 18-month action plan, right? Like that's where this is all leading. Okay, so lovely little swooping in. So I'm going to escape, get out of here, stop share. Okay, guys, so this is the idea. This is what we would do at our next IPRTF meeting so that we could get full voice from the committee on what the top priorities should be, or 3 top priorities. So how did that go? What do you think? Is that going to help us get to where we need to go? Because, obviously we can't, everything can continue, but we need, also, I think the feeling is from the leaders here, we need to do some focusing. So yeah, Stephen.
I think that was an effective process and a good tool. I think it made it manageable to pick 3. I think if you looked at those, and I know we're just looking at a small trial group, there were actually 4 topics that got the most. So I think 3 for choosing is a good process, but I don't know that we need to limit. It's otherwise for the task force to prioritize. It's arbitrary to say 3 instead of 4, especially since the 4th was one of the original recommendations strongly recommended by the Vera Institute report, however, 7 years ago. So I think we should be a little more flexible in what we ask or what we take out of this for task force focus.
Okay, so like still, Stephen, are you saying still have them choose 3 and then just know that we can say, oh, and there's, maybe a 4th in there, or saying that we should have them choose? Yeah, is that what you're saying? Okay.
Jill?
So this probably isn't the kind of feedback you're looking for, but from a public records perspective, I'm concerned. I'm hoping that Menti, this platform, can produce a report that says who voted how. I'm concerned that this process is going to look like some kind of a hidden or anonymous vote in a public meeting, and we do need to have a record of who votes how. So I just want to put that out there for us to think about. I'm happy to work with you and Marty after this meeting or later, if this, to make sure we do this properly. Zoom also has a poll feature we can try out if you like, but that's just something that I'm a little concerned about.
Thanks, Jill. That was my initial concern too, is about the public, the OPM. So,
Okay.
Peter?
Oh, I just wanted to say, ultimately, I think it would be great to just rank order all 10. I mean, from each of us, have our names on it, and also what committee we're on, because I think we're very interested in what committee members think as well. And what ultimately we want to get to an 18-month work plan where we know what the IPRTF main body is going to be addressing over 18 months and what the committees are going to be addressing and what we all think of as our priorities. And so those are my 2 thoughts.
Dan?
Yeah, I'll be brief. We have 4 electeds on this call that just voted anonymously. We can't do that. That is definitely against OPMA regulations, and we need to make sure that we attach our names to the votes that we take. And I think that's it's the law. And it's also a fair public process. So if there's a way to do that with this tool, or we'd use another tool, I guess, but to make sure that we associate our names with the votes that we're taking. Thanks.
Can I just step in to make one quick correction? The vote that we just did, the polling that you guys just did, was not any kind of a decision. It was simply a practice to see if this platform will work, which clearly we need to make some tweaks. We did not just take any kind of an official vote. Thank you.
I want to follow up real quick. I realize that, but in the future, for the votes that we would take that would formally make decisions, we have to make sure that we associate our names, electeds at least, with the votes that we take. And I realize this was kind of a dry run and no decision was made.
Actually, all the members are subject to OPMA, so that would need to be across the board, not just electeds.
Agree. That was my comment as well. Thank you, Dan.
Heather?
I love this exercise though. I love being able to see where there's interest and energy that helps guide discussions. And if we have time, if we want to just be extra careful, I'm happy to, like, could we just go around and say what our top 3 were that we each picked? I'd love to know what each of you picked, just as who you are. I'll go first. And can we do that really quick?
Do we have time? Yeah, I suppose unless we have
rapid
anything
fire.
else, Peter, that you want, do you have anything more substantive to discuss, Peter, after that? No, okay, yeah, go ahead, Heather.
Okay, my top 3 were data dashboard, best practices, jail, behavioral care center, and court reforms.
Mine 3 were the ones which are the 3 top, so I don't remember the names.
Would it
Re-entry, data, and jail.
Yeah, okay.
help if I put the Menti back up on the screen, you guys?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Who's next?
I can call on people, I guess. Yeah, I can do that. Raylene, what were your top 3?
1, 4, 5, and 6 were my top 4, and I can't remember if I put 4 or 5 for my third one.
Nice.
Mhm.
Birdie.
Mine were data dashboard, best practice for jail, and reentry.
Nice. Eric.
681, if I can vote.
Reentry, court, and data. Love it.
Don't say the word
Um,
no.
Right.
Peter.
I was the top 3 there, I believe. Create data dashboard, adapt best practices for the jail BCC, and implement court reforms.
Love it.
So, and boy, do I just want to rank all of them.
I know.
I want that exercise. So
They're
yeah.
all important. Stephen, what were your top 3?
Sorry, I was along the lines of many of us. I create data dashboard, adapt best practices, and implement court reforms.
Nice. Barry, what were your top 3?
I was data dashboard, best practices, and reentry services.
Nice. And Dan.
3, 4, and 6.
I love it. Supportive housing, diversion programs, reentry. Isn't it nice to know? I actually think this is great feedback, Holly and Marty and Peter, about the process, because it is really nice to know how people are oriented as well. And maybe there's a way we could have each of us rank 1 through 10 and turn that in for public record or something. I don't know, but I think that's great.
Quick question about this tool. Just listening to it, I would say 75 to 80% of us had data dashboard, and yet it only reflected 29%. So what's that about?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I'm hearing that there is a tool in Menti, and I'm sure it's probably in Zoom too, to do the ranking. So that might be the better way to go. I actually had a process question I wanted to ask. Do you guys, I think of polling being more like what you would call a temperature check, like you're getting a sense of direction versus a vote. So in my world, we would distinguish those two as like, temperature check versus a formal vote. But in your world, in this world, is there a distinction from that?
Not one that I would care to try to define.
Okay. Okay, no. So
Yeah.
hence that issue of transparency is especially important because you're not distinguishing. Great, thanks.
Peter?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I have now told you how we got to these 10. And if any of you want to check our work and have any issues around the language, around how these were chosen, things that needed to be added, you know, the next week or so would be the time, because I believe we need to get, well, Jill, when do we need to get everything ready to go for our October meeting?
I need materials by end of day tomorrow
Ooh,
to be
end
in
of
the
day.
packet. To be in the
Okay.
packet. Yes.
Okay. So if you could, if you feel like there was something missing, now would be a great time, or today, tomorrow would be a great time to bring that up. And then Barry, just have we fulfilled the process for getting ready for our October meeting? Is everybody on board with the direction we're going with this, the exercise leading up to a November meeting where we would be then we'll have a process for discussion of goal setting for 18 months.
It sounds good to me, as long as we can satisfy our OPMA requirements that have been articulated here by Nick. So that's important. And, but I think your timeline and everything sounds good, Peter.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everybody, we have amazingly finished 3 minutes early. So
Not quite. Excuse me.
I'm going to give that back to you. Oh, Heather, come on.
Sorry,
Not-
I have to
Go
ask.
ahead.
We had the really fantastic re-entry simulation. The re-entry team is wondering if the IPRTF would like a special debrief or presentation on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Enough thumbs up that I'll work with Jill on timing of that. Okay, thank
No,
you.
that
Now,
sounds
Barry.
No, Barry, this is Jill here. We still have public comment.
Oh, yeah, public comment. Do we have anyone in our conference room or online? Dean?
We do. Dean, go ahead and speak.
Thank you. Just fascinating watching that rank ordering process, prioritization process. I just want to point out that those 10 items are not necessarily, there are some dependencies among those 10 items. And so, for example, and something I'm focused on right now is the data and performance measurement contract we've got or hope to have soon. And as a part of that, looking at the sequential intercept model as a frame for data collection points, which I think we'll be discussing. But it's going to be hard to have some information in a data dashboard if you haven't defined where you want those data, what points in the flow, which the SIM represents, that you want some data collected. And so just to point out that there are dependencies and perhaps things that can be subsumed under other areas. Similarly, with the coordination among agencies, that has some relationship to the way in which reentry and other community services are delivered, that they are dependent on that kind of communication and coordination tool.
All right, thanks, Dean. And just to kind of add to something you said that kind of sparked something in my brain is that the SIM is actually going to be updated by the health department soon. So that is in work.
Well, if I'm still able.
Oh, go ahead, Dean. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a discussion going on about how best to go about dealing with the SIM and whether we do a full-blown update or just do some analysis. But Marty and Holly and I and the Village Reach contractor and the folks from the health department are going to be having a discussion about how to make that tool as effective as possible, both in the short and the long run.
That sounds good, Dean. Thank you. All right, everybody, it is 12:30. And we will see many of you back here at 2 p.m. for J-Pop, our first rollout of that committee. So everybody, we are adjourned. Have a good one.
Jill here, Birdie, Jenna, Holly, Marty, if you have